It's heartbreaking as a father. I'm a father of 3 daughters, so I couldn't imagine my daughters being without a father. So my heart breaks as a parent. And just not even just me as a parent, but just other, families in the community losing their children as well.
A deadly shooting is under investigation at the Dollar General on Victory Drive in Columbus. Officers have been on the scene working to determine exactly what happened.
To experience all that I experienced in life up to this point, to come back home, to lose my sister in this way, it's just heartbreaking. I've cried more in the last 4 days than I have in my whole life.
At the beginning of my career, about 5 years ago, I was dispatched out to a call in reference to a domestic dispute, and she happened to be the manager. She was the foundation in someone else's life to help them get the help that they needed to get out of a bad situation.
The security footage starts like any other Tuesday morning. A customer walks in, grabs a pack of hamburger buns off the shelf. Nothing rushed, nothing strange. Just another few seconds in a store that sees hundreds of people exactly like him every single week. He sets the buns on the counter. The cashier rings him up. $1.58. He hands her $2 bills folded and crumpled. She does what she's done thousands of times before. Starts smoothing them flat so they'll lie right in the register drawer. That's the last thing she will ever do. Because in the next 2 seconds, the man steps to the side, raises a gun, and fires. And the only sound left in that store afterward is the register drawer, still half open, with 2 crumpled dollar bills sitting inside it. He had walked out of prison 30 days earlier. Nobody in that store knew his name. Nobody had a single reason to expect what was about to happen. And by the time police finally caught up to him 2 hours later, one more life would already be hanging in the balance. This time, a police officer's and a K9's, the department's term for a trained police dog. This is the story of the 30 days that led to that moment, and everything that should have happened in between, but didn't. 2 crumpled dollar bills, still sitting in an open register drawer. That's where we left off. Now rewind 3 days, to a press conference on the other side of Columbus, Georgia. Not Columbus, Ohio, the city most Americans picture first when they hear the name, where Police Chief Stoney Mathis stood in front of a bank of cameras and said something that sounded, at the time, like a warning. You commit murder in the city of Columbus, and then you shoot 2 of my police officers. We're going to kill you. It wasn't a threat. By the time those words left his mouth, both halves of that sentence had already come true. He wasn't promising justice. He was describing it, past tense. Here's what almost nobody watching that press conference knew. The man Mathis was talking about had been free for exactly 30 days. Not 30 years removed from his last conviction. Not 30 months of supervised release, easing back into society with someone checking in on him. 30 days. 1 month, almost to the hour, between a prison gate closing behind him and a gun going off inside a Dollar General. 30 days is nothing. It's not enough time to find steady housing. It's barely enough time to get a paycheck. It is, however, exactly enough time for a person to disappear completely, off every radar meant to catch someone before something like this happens. This is not just the story of what Jerome Willis did on June 23rd. It's the story of everything that had to go quiet, everything that went unrecorded, in the 30 days before he ever walked through that door. Somewhere in that month, a decision was made that he was safe to walk free. That decision has not been publicly explained, not by the state, not by the prison, not in any official record made public since. Before we get to that blind spot in the system, you need to understand exactly who was standing on the other side of that counter, because in a few minutes, her name is the only one this story is going to remember. Her name was Alexis Hill, and before this becomes a story about a system that failed, it has to be a story about who that failure cost. She was 44 years old. For almost 7 years, she managed the Dollar General on Victory Drive in Columbus, the kind of job most people scroll past on a job board, and the kind of job Alexis showed up for anyway, day after day, without complaint. Before that store, there was Circle K. Before Circle K, Kohl's. Before that, peak pavement and a stretch with the Georgia Department of Transportation. Read that list back and you don't see a resume. You see a woman who never once stopped working. Through every shift change, every new manager, every ordinary Tuesday that asked nothing special of her except to show up. She did. Columbus Police Corporal Heather Hicks remembers her, not as a case file, but as a person. Years earlier, Hicks had responded to a domestic dispute call, and Alexis, working that day, was the one who helped connect the person in crisis to the resources they needed to get out safely.
At the beginning of my career, about 5 years ago, I was dispatched out to a call in reference to a domestic dispute, and she happened to be the manager. She was the foundation in someone else's life to help them get the help that they needed to get out of a bad situation.
Hicks would say later that Alexis had the biggest heart she'd ever seen on someone who never once made it about herself. She always put everyone else first, every single time.
She had the biggest heart you could possibly think of, and more so, she cared about everybody.
That's the woman behind the register. Now here's the family waiting on the other end of a phone she never got to make. 3 sons, Jaden, Christopher, and Michael, all grown, all gone from Columbus, all rebuilding their lives together in Colorado, working solar panel installation, 2 grandchildren, waiting for a grandmother who talked about them constantly, and a plan, a real one, with a date on it, for Alexis to finally join them. August. She was supposed to be in Colorado by August, watching her grandkids grow up in person instead of on a screen. She never made it. A scheduled surgery pushed the move back. That's the only reason she was still behind a register in Columbus, Georgia, instead of already settled 2,000 miles away with the people she loved most. One postponed appointment, one quiet delay nobody thought twice about. That's the margin this entire tragedy fit inside. Picture her that morning. 9 o'clock. The store just open. The register drawer freshly counted. The fluorescent lights doing what fluorescent lights do, making an ordinary Tuesday look exactly like every other one. Almost 7 years of showing up teaches you to stop thinking about anything except the next customer and the one after that. She has no idea a man is already somewhere nearby. A man who, 1 month earlier, walked out of a Georgia state prison and into 30 days that nobody has ever fully accounted for. She doesn't know his name. She has no reason to. In every way that matters, they are strangers, standing on opposite sides of a story that hasn't started yet. In 1 hour, that changes. And the thing that finally brings them face to face isn't an argument, isn't a grudge, isn't anything that happened between them, because nothing ever did. It's smaller than that. Smaller than almost anything you can imagine being the reason someone doesn't come home. You already know the number. What you don't know yet is exactly how fast it happens. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. 10 o'clock, June 23rd, 2026. The bell above the door barely finishes ringing before he's already at the shelf. Hamburger buns, nothing else. He doesn't browse. He doesn't linger. He walks straight to the register like a man who already knows exactly what he came for. Alexis rings him up. $1.58. He hands her $2 bills. They're crumpled, folded too many times, softened at the edges. The kind of bills that don't sit flat in a drawer unless somebody takes a second to fix them. So she does. Same as she's done 1,000 times before. Same as she'll never get to do again. Her hands are still on those bills when he moves. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't ask for anything. He simply steps to the side. One small shift of his body, the kind of movement a security camera barely registers as significant, and raises the gun. One shot, that's all it takes. Muskogee County Coroner Buddy Bryan would later confirm this sequence exactly as the footage shows it. The buns, the crumpled bills, the moment her hands were still smoothing them flat when the shot was fired. Deputy Coroner Dustin Harrelson pronounced Alexis Hill dead at the scene at 10:46 that morning, barely 2 hours into her shift. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He turned, and he walked out the same door he'd walked in through less than a minute earlier, as if nothing inside that store had just changed forever. $1.58. Say it out loud and it sounds almost too small to be real. This isn't a story about a robbery that spiraled out of control. There was no struggle over money, no demand, nothing stolen. He paid the bill. He killed the cashier, in that order. And it happened exactly 30 days after the state of Georgia looked at Jerome Willis's file and decided he was safe enough to walk free. That decision is where this story goes next, because every warning sign that was or wasn't there is sitting in a file nobody appears to have revisited until it was already too late. Somewhere in a Georgia Department of Corrections database, there's a file with his name on it. And if you'd pulled that file 31 days before Alexis Hill went to work that morning, here's what you would have found. His full name, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the state's lead agency for major crime investigations, GBI for short, was Jerome Marquis Willis, 33 years old, a lifelong resident of Columbus. The file starts in 2007, when Willis was still a juvenile, convicted of robbery in Muskogee County, the county Columbus sits in. The sentence handed down was 20 years, with 10 of them to be served. A 10-year prison sentence, beginning before he was even old enough to vote, to sign a lease, to legally buy the beer some of his classmates were probably already drinking. Not a footnote, the first page of a pattern. The file doesn't end there. In 2023 and 2024, Willis was back in Muskogee County courts, this time convicted of terroristic threats, a specific Georgia criminal charge covering threats to commit violence serious enough to be prosecuted on their own, even without a weapon ever being fired. He served roughly 2 years for that charge. 2 convictions, more than 15 years apart, both violent in nature, both originating in the same few square miles of Columbus, Georgia. And then, on May 21st, 2026, state records confirm Willis walked out of Dooley State Prison, southeast of Macon, a free man. Nobody stopped him at the gate. Nobody needed to. Legally, he'd served what the courts required. That's how the system is built to work. Serve your time. And time, on paper, equals debt paid. But here's the question this file never answers, and it's the question that should unsettle you more than anything else in this video. In 17 years of arrests, convictions, and incarceration, a juvenile robbery, a decade in and out of custody, a second conviction for threatening violence, was Jerome Willis ever formally evaluated for a mental health condition? Public records reviewed for this case show no documented evaluation, no diagnosis on file, no indication that a psychiatric professional ever sat across from him and asked the questions that might have changed what happened next. That isn't unusual. What most people picture when they hear released from prison is a parole officer keeping tabs on someone for months or years afterward. In practice, Georgia's process for helping people transition out of prison, like most states, is built almost entirely around supervision, not evaluation, check-ins, curfews, proof of employment, if a parole officer is even assigned to the case at all. What it is not built around, unless a diagnosis already exists somewhere in a person's file, is asking whether that person is psychologically prepared to re-enter a world that, for him, had barely existed since he was a teenager. A person can spend the better part of 2 decades cycling through a system built almost entirely to punish and contain, and walk out the other side, having never once been formally asked whether something deeper was going wrong underneath all of it. Whether that gap mattered in this specific case is something the public record simply doesn't answer. But it's worth asking the question anyway, because a system that only tracks behavior, arrests, sentences, release dates, and never asks why the behavior kept repeating, isn't necessarily solving anything. It may just be resetting the clock. Here's the timeline as the public record shows it, laid flat. 2007, a juvenile convicted of robbery, sentenced as an adult, no note of a psychological evaluation in the public file. 2023 and 2024, a second conviction for terroristic threats, and again, no publicly available record of a court-ordered mental health assessment. May 21st, 2026. A release date, a signature, a door. And from that door forward, for the next 30 days, Jerome Willis existed almost entirely off the radar of the very system that had just spent 17 years cycling him in and out of custody. What happened inside that blank space? What he was thinking? Where he was staying? Whether anyone around him noticed something was wrong, is the part of this story nobody has ever been able to fully answer. And that's exactly where we're going next, because the 30 days that followed his release aren't just background. They're the window in which something might have been caught and wasn't. Picture a calendar, 30 squares, May 21st in one corner, June 23rd in the other. Now try to fill in what happened in between. You can't. As of the most recent public reporting on this case, nobody can. Not investigators, not journalists, not, as far as any released record shows, the state of Georgia itself. There is no published account of where Jerome Willis slept during those 30 days. No confirmation of whether he checked in with a parole officer, or whether one was even assigned to him. No record of a job, an address, a phone call to a family member expressing that something felt wrong. That entire month is, functionally, a blank page in a case that has answers for almost everything else. Sit with that for a second. We know the make and caliber of the weapon. We know the exact second the register drawer opened. We know down to the minute when Alexis Hill was pronounced dead, and down to the minute Jerome Willis was too. But the 30 days that connect a prison gate to a Dollar General checkout line, the only 30 days that might have actually made a difference, are the one part of this story where the record simply goes quiet. That silence isn't a small detail. It may be the most important fact in this entire case. Here's what we do know, in general terms, about what a month like that can do to a person. Researchers who study incarceration and reentry describe a documented pattern they call reentry shock, the disorientation of walking out of a structure that controlled every hour of your day, every meal, every decision, and suddenly having none of that. No schedule, no supervision, no safety net catching you if you start to fall. It's a general pattern, not a diagnosis of any one person, and there's no public record confirming which, if any of it, applied to Jerome Willis specifically. But it's the context this case sits inside, whether or not it explains it. We're not speculating about what was happening inside Jerome Willis's mind during that month. We can't. Nobody can, and anyone who tells you otherwise is guessing. What we can tell you is what his own mother said, publicly, after everything else had already happened. Bernice Hartman spoke to reporters in the days following her son's death. She offered her condolences to Alexis Hill's family. Genuine, direct condolences, mother to mother. For a loss she said she understood. And she said something else. She said her son had struggled with paranoia, and that she believed it played a role in how things unfolded once police caught up to him. That's her account. It's not a diagnosis. There is no medical record made public that confirms a formal evaluation, a prescription, a hospitalization, anything that would turn a mother's grief-stricken explanation into documented fact. We're telling you what she said because it's part of this story, and because you deserve to hear both sides of it. We're not going to pretend it's more than what it is, and we're not going to use it to explain why Alexis Hill is dead. Nothing about a mental health struggle, documented or not, makes what happened in that store anything other than what the footage shows it to be. What actually should stay with you from this chapter isn't whether Bernice Hartman's account is true. It's that no formal evaluation had to happen, one way or the other, before Jerome Willis was handed his freedom back. If a psychiatric evaluation had been mandated as a condition of his release, the kind some states require for individuals with a documented history of violent offenses, there might be a record today of whether paranoia was present, whether it was being treated, whether it was flagged as a risk at all. Instead, there's a mother's word, offered after two people were already dead, and a public record with nothing to confirm or deny it either way. An absence, not a single dramatic failure. That's where this tragedy actually falls. No missed phone call anyone can point to. No ignored warning sign on paper. Just 30 days of nothing. where something might have been. And somewhere at the very end of that blank calendar page, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, Jerome Willis walked into a Dollar General on Victory Drive, holding a pack of Hamburger Buns. What happens next, you already know. What you don't know yet is how fast the rest of Columbus mobilized once it did. Because within minutes of that first shot, an entire city's worth of police resources turned toward a parking lot on the other side of town. And what happened there came dangerously close to costing 2 more lives before the day was over. Somewhere behind the Dollar General on Victory Drive, a dispatcher's voice cuts through department radios across Columbus, and every officer who hears it knows exactly what it means. Shots fired. Suspect fled on foot. Within seconds, a manhunt that could have taken days is already moving at the speed of a citywide alert. This wasn't a cold trail. Columbus police had clean surveillance footage, a clear face, and a description broadcast to every unit in range before Alexis Hill had even been pronounced dead at the scene. Jonathan Hill, Alexis's brother, would later credit the detectives working the case by name, Detective Spivey and his team, alongside a sergeant he remembered as Dave Davies, working in coordination with the department's Violent Crimes Task Force. Jonathan called it the best task force Columbus had ever put together. From where he stood that day, watching officers scramble toward their vehicles in real time, he wasn't wrong to be impressed. It didn't take long. Officers tracked Willis to a parking lot in the 3800 block of Baker Plaza Drive, a stretch of South Columbus, sitting close to the site of the old Muskogee Elementary School, a building that, this morning, wasn't empty. It now houses a robotics program and a family resource center, and there were children inside it, while all of this was happening less than a mile from where Alexis Hill had just been killed. Somewhere in that neighborhood, a classroom full of kids was building robots, completely unaware that a manhunt for an active shooter was closing in on the block next door. At 11:40 that morning, officers found Willis in the lot. They gave him verbal commands, the kind every officer is trained to give. Calm, direct, designed to end a situation before it escalates. Stand down, show your hands, get on the ground. He didn't move. There's a particular kind of silence that settles over a scene like this. Officers with weapons drawn, positions being called out over radio, a suspect standing perfectly still while everyone around him waits to see which way this goes. It's the silence right before something either ends peacefully or doesn't. This one didn't. Willis refused every command given to him. In the 60 seconds that followed, what had been a manhunt became something else entirely, a second active scene, in a second location, with real bullets and real lives, less than 2 hours after the first ones were already lost. Up to this point, everything that happened to Alexis Hill was sudden, over before anyone watching could have reacted. What happened next in that parking lot was the opposite. It built, second by second, command by command. Everyone standing in that lot could feel exactly where this was heading, and nobody could stop it from getting there. Officers on scene weren't just facing a suspect who wouldn't comply. They were facing a decision about how to end this without anyone else dying. And the tool they reached for next wasn't a weapon at all. It had 4 legs, a badge on its harness, and 2 years of training that were about to be tested in the worst possible way. His name was Havoc, a 2-year-old German shepherd, cross-trained in narcotics detection, tracking, and apprehension, the kind of dog capable of closing a dangerous gap between an officer and an armed suspect without anyone having to fire a shot first. That was the plan. Send Havoc in, end this without more blood on the pavement of Baker Plaza Drive. Willis had other plans. When Havoc moved toward him, Willis raised his weapon and fired directly at the dog. Then, without lowering the gun, he kept it trained on the officer standing nearest to him, the same officer Havoc had just been sent in to protect. Everything after that happened in seconds. Officers returned fire. Willis was struck multiple times. At 1:16 that afternoon, less than 3 hours after Alexis Hill was pronounced dead across town, Jerome Willis was pronounced dead too. The GBI confirmed both the officer and Havoc had been struck, and that neither injury was considered life-threatening. 2 people, one of them with 4 legs, had just been shot by the same man in the same 60 seconds. And both of them were, against every odd that moment presented, going to survive.
One of our officers were injured, as well as one of our canine officers, and the suspect is deceased, but there's no threat to public safety at this time.
Havoc didn't know that yet. Neither did the man who loved him most. His handler, Corporal Brent Wilson, followed him to Auburn University Veterinary Hospital, where Havoc was rushed into emergency surgery. Wilson wasn't allowed into the room right away. Havoc wasn't taking visitors, not even his own partner. So Wilson waited. Think about what that waiting room must have felt like. Hours earlier, Wilson had watched his partner run directly into gunfire on his command. Now he was sitting in a hallway at a veterinary hospital, with no way to know whether the last time he saw Havoc standing on all four legs was going to be the last time, period. The surgery went better than anyone expected. When Wilson was finally allowed back into the room, the reunion between them was the kind of moment that doesn't need narration to land. A police department that had spent the entire day fielding questions about violence, about death, about a system that failed a woman named Alexis Hill, suddenly had one small, undeniable piece of good news to hold on to. Havoc was going to be okay. The department said it plainly, and it's worth repeating exactly as they meant it. Havoc took the brunt of the injuries that day, and without question, his actions helped protect the officers standing beside him. Step back from it, and here's what this chapter actually represents. Less than 3 hours passed between the moment Alexis Hill straightened 2 crumpled dollar bills and the moment Jerome Willis took his last breath in a parking lot on the other side of Columbus. In that window, 2 more living things were shot. And for once in this story, the outcome broke the other way. The officer recovered. Havoc recovered. Corporal Wilson got his partner back. It's the only piece of this entire case where the ending doesn't hurt to say out loud. But hold on to that feeling loosely, because it's not where this story is going next. Havoc's reunion with Corporal Wilson happened in a hospital hallway, in private, away from cameras, away from the public. What happened next happened in front of a WTVM News 9 camera crew, reporter Gabriella Johnson among them. And it's the moment this entire case stops being about protocol, records, and timelines, and becomes something far harder to sit through. Because somewhere in Columbus, a retired Marine named Jonathan Hill was about to sit down in front of that camera and try to explain, in his own words, what it actually feels like to lose a sister over $1.58. Jonathan Hill wakes up most mornings the same way. He puts on his PT gear, Marine Corps shorthand for physical training clothes, an old habit that never really left him, and heads out to the Columbus Riverwalk for his routine. 55 minutes out, then back, rain or shine. It's less exercise than it is ritual, the kind of thing that keeps a person steady. June 23rd started exactly like every other morning on that path. He was somewhere in the first leg of his walk when his phone rang. His nephew Christopher, voice cracking down the line. Mom's been shot. They don't know if she's going to make it. Jonathan doesn't remember deciding what to do next. He just remembers running until he ran out of breath, getting back to his car, and driving, his own words, within the limits of the law, straight to the Dollar General on Victory Drive, to the sister he'd known his entire life. By the time he got there, it was already over. This is the part of the story that doesn't have a timeline, or a police report, or a coroner's ruling attached to it. This is just a brother, standing at a crime scene, trying to process the fact that the last ordinary Tuesday of his life had just ended without warning. When WTVM News 9 sat down with Jonathan in the days that followed, reporter Gabriella Johnson leading the interview, he didn't give the kind of polished, rehearsed statement you'd expect from someone media-trained. He gave something harder to watch and harder to forget.
Tell us about who she was as a person.
Okay, as a person, born and raised here, right here in Columbus, just sweet, kind, always willing to go out of her way to help someone and go the extra mile. She'd give the shirt off her back if she needed to. She was always helping people. As far as I could see, I went off into the military and retired, and I came back in 2019, and ever since I've been back, she's been busy, busy with the children, busy with the grandchildren, and just helping everyone she could. I think one of the last things she did was, gather some supplies for someone that was in need.
He can't be replaced, Jonathan said. That's it. No elaborate eulogy. No perfectly constructed sentence. Just 4 words, repeated like he was still trying to convince himself they were true.
Even at the crime scene, I got, droves of people were coming over and just telling us, how wonderful she was and how helpful she was and how she donated things to charity and everything. So, she can't be replaced.
He talked about the last real conversation they'd had, a 3-way FaceTime call with their mother, all of them laughing about something from decades ago. Alexis insisting she remembered falling off a bed as a kid and cutting her eye open. Jonathan didn't remember it the same way. They went back and forth about it, the way siblings do, neither one willing to concede the point. Somewhere in that same call, he teased her about missing a Masters of the Universe movie together and promised he'd make it up to her with a trip to see the new Spider-Man film. The last movie they'd actually gone to together, before that promise was ever made, was John Wick. He'll never get to keep that promise now. And Jonathan, in that interview, said something that tells you exactly how he plans to carry that forward. From now on, every time he goes to the movies, he's buying 2 seats. One for himself, one that stays empty, next to him, for the rest of his life, because that seat belongs to his sister, and he's not going to let anyone else sit in it. That's not a metaphor built by a scriptwriter. It's a real decision, made by a real man, in the middle of the worst week of his life. He talked about his nephews too, Alexis's sons, the reason she was counting down the days to Colorado in the first place. Michael, now training other solar installers on camera for his company, a level of pride in Jonathan's voice that had nothing to do with grief. Christopher, recently promoted, the same nephew who'd called Jonathan with the news that morning. Their cousin Sheldon, working alongside them out west, all of them building something together as a family. All 3 of Alexis's sons came up through Columbus schools, Rothschild, Kendrick, and Carver among them. Jonathan said, homegrown Columbus kids who took their mother's work ethic and carried it 2,000 miles away, into an entirely different life. There's another voice in this story worth hearing too. A second family member, identified in her interview only as the aunt of Alexis's son Jerome Hill, described a relationship that had nothing to do with the case and everything to do with who Alexis actually was. She said they'd talked on the phone at least once a week for over 20 years. She said she was the one Alexis called whenever Jaden needed someone to talk sense into him, a running joke between 2 women who trusted each other completely. She said the hardest part now isn't any single moment. It's smaller than that. It's knowing Alexis's name isn't going to show up on her phone screen again. 20 years of weekly phone calls, gone in the time it takes to straighten $2 bills.
And so Alexis is the mother of my nephew. Been knowing her over 20-something years, and we always have had a great relationship, laugh, talk. And we talk at least once a week, even up to this day. And so I am the one she calls on when Jaden is not doing what Jaden, and she calls me and she I need you to get your nephew. I need you to talk to your nephew. And I'd be like, okay, or why me? And so that's the one thing I'm gonna miss is that I'm not going to see her name pop up on my phone and call me and hear her voice. And the last conversation I just had with her was a week ago. And while she was talking, and I stopped and I said, Alexis, I don't know what it is about your voice. I said, but your voice, even when you're mad or you're talking, about something, your voice always sounds so sweet and so calm.
Here's what should stop you cold about everything you've just heard. None of it. Not the river walk, not the FaceTime call, not the empty movie seat, not 20 years of Sunday phone calls, appears anywhere in a police report. None of it factors into a coroner's timeline or a GBI press release or the file the Georgia Department of Corrections kept on Jerome Willis. It exists only because a family sat down in front of a camera and chose to share it, in their own broken, unscripted words, because they needed the world to understand that Alexis Hill was never just a name in a headline. She was somebody's weekly phone call, somebody's movie night promise, somebody's reason for finally slowing down and moving to Colorado after decades of showing up to work. And Jonathan Hill, standing in the wreckage of all of that, didn't spend his interview asking for revenge. He didn't demand harsher sentences or call for anyone to go after Willis's family. What he asked for instead, and what his own words made painfully clear, was something far more specific and far more uncomfortable to sit with. An answer to how a man with Willis's history was ever handed his freedom back without anyone making sure he was actually ready for it. That question doesn't stay confined to one family for long, because on the other side of this tragedy, another mother was watching everything unfold too. And what she had to say next asks you to hold two difficult truths in your hands at exactly the same time. Two women, two sons and daughters, lost in the exact same 60 seconds, on opposite sides of a gun. And when reporters finally caught up with each of them, both mothers said something that, if you strip away who they are and where they stood in this tragedy, sounds almost identical. Start with Jonathan Hill, because you already know his voice by now. In that same WTVM interview, after he'd finished talking about the empty movie seat and the 20 years of phone calls his family had lost, Jonathan said something that reframed everything he'd said before it. "Vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord." That's how he put it, quoting a line of scripture familiar to most church-going Americans, from the book of Romans, not as a throwaway line, but as a decision he'd clearly already made, sitting with it before the cameras ever showed up. He said he believed the Columbus Police Department had already carried out that justice in the parking lot on Baker Plaza Drive, and he asked, directly, for the public to leave Willis's family alone. No harassment, no retaliation, nothing that would turn one tragedy into two families destroyed instead of one. That's not a small thing to ask, in the middle of the worst week of your life. It's the kind of restraint most people talk about in theory, and very few actually practice when the moment demands it. Now hold that beside what Bernice Hartman said. Willis's mother spoke publicly too, in the days after her son's death. She offered her condolences to Alexis Hill's family. Not a hedge, not a qualifier, a direct acknowledgement that another mother was grieving exactly the way she was. And then she said something that complicated the story the public had already settled on. She said she wasn't yet convinced her son had done this. She said she believed police might have picked him at random, walking down the street. It's worth pausing on that claim directly, because it isn't just uncertain, it runs against what's already been established earlier in this case. Surveillance footage places Willis at the register. The county coroner confirmed that sequence matches the footage exactly. The GBI identified him by name in its own public statements. Nothing in the public record supports the idea that police detained the wrong man. We're including Bernice Hartman's account because it's part of how this story was reported, and because a mother's grief deserves to be heard honestly, not because the claim itself holds up against the evidence. She also said her son had struggled with paranoia. Paranoia she believed intensified the moment police caught up to him in that parking lot, and that she felt played a role in how the confrontation ended. We told you in an earlier chapter exactly how much weight that claim can carry, and it hasn't changed. There's no medical record made public confirming a diagnosis, no documentation of treatment or hospitalization, or a formal evaluation on file anywhere in the public record reviewed for this case. What Bernice Hartman offered was a mother's account, given in real time, in real grief, not a clinical finding. We're not asking you to accept it as fact. We're asking you to hear it as what it actually is. One woman's attempt to make sense of a version of her son that the rest of the world only ever saw for a few seconds of surveillance footage. Here's what actually deserves your attention in this chapter, though. Two mothers, two families gutted on the exact same Tuesday. Neither one of them built the system that let a man with a violent juvenile robbery conviction and a second conviction for threatening violence walk out of Dooley State Prison with what the public record suggests was no mandated psychiatric follow-up waiting for him on the other side. Neither Alexis Hill's family nor Jerome Willis's family designed George's reentry process. Neither one of them decided that 30 days was long enough, or short enough, or anything at all, for a person with that history to go completely unsupervised. And yet both families are the ones left holding the consequences of that decision. One family burying a woman who did nothing wrong, the other trying to explain a son the system apparently never fully understood either. Two tragedies, one shared root cause, a gap in the system neither family had any part in creating. And Jonathan Hill, when he wasn't talking about his sister directly, made that point better than anyone else in this entire case. He wasn't asking for harsher punishment. He wasn't calling for longer sentences, or a colder system, or more prison time stacked on top of what Willis had already served. What he asked for was something almost nobody in true crime ever hears a victim's family request. A place, specifically for repeat offenders, that isn't just a cell, and isn't just the open street with nothing in between. Somewhere supervised. Somewhere a person could still be productive, still work, still rebuild something, but not simply be handed full, unsupervised freedom the moment a sentence technically ends, with nobody qualified ever signing off that they're actually ready for it. Think about how specific that request is. It's not vengeance. It's not even really about Jerome Willis anymore, by the time Jonathan says it. It's an architecture problem, a gap between still dangerous and fully free that Georgia's system, like most states, simply doesn't have a structure for. You're either behind bars or you're not. There's nothing built for the space in between. Even when 17 years of a person's record is pointing directly at that space in between as exactly where intervention was needed. That gap is what killed Alexis Hill. Not a single missed phone call. Not one ignored red flag anyone can point to directly and say, there, that's where this could have been stopped. Just an absence, stretched across 30 days, in a system that was never built to ask the right question in the first place. Jonathan Hill's final request wasn't complicated. He wants to know that gap gets closed before it costs someone else what it cost his sister. Whether Columbus or Georgia or anyone with the power to actually close that gap is listening, that's a question this video can't answer for you. But what happened in the days after Alexis Hill's death, in the community she spent almost 2 decades serving, is something we can show you. And it's the only part of this entire story that offers anything close to an answer for what a city does when the system it depends on fails one of its own, this completely. A city doesn't heal a wound like this with statements and press releases. It heals it, if it heals at all, in the small, specific things people choose to do when nobody's making them do it. Columbus didn't just mourn Alexis Hill, it moved. The Funnel Cake Factory, a restaurant sitting close to the scene of the shooting, started donating a portion of its daily proceeds directly to the Hill family. Its owner, speaking to a local news crew, put the reason as simply as it could be put.
As community members struggled with the loss of Alexis Hill, a local restaurant is calling on the community to help. The Funnel Cake Factory, located near the site of the deadly shooting, is feeling the impact. Over the next several days, the restaurant will be taking a portion of their proceeds and donating it to Alexis Hill's family.
This is our community. You know, we not only serve the homeless, we serve the community. We have employees that live here in this community. We frequently bought things to our inventory at Dollar General, Walmart, and Dollar Tree. So we've had interactions over there. And it's just in our heart to give back, you know. So we're trying to do our best to help the family in any way we can.
This is our community. We frequently bought from that Dollar General ourselves. That's a neighbor, doing the only thing a neighbor actually can. Dollar General's corporate office released its own statement. Condolences to the family. Condolences to the staff, who had to keep working inside the same store where their manager was killed. The Victory Drive location closed temporarily. Grief counselors were brought in for employees who needed somewhere to process what they'd witnessed, or what they'd walked into the aftermath of. A corporate statement is still a corporate statement. But the people behind that counter, the ones who knew Alexis personally, who probably joked with her that very morning before everything changed. They needed that support, and for once, it showed up. Jonathan Hill set up a GoFundMe in his sister's name, a crowdfunding page, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, covering funeral costs, burial expenses, travel for family flying in from out of state, and ongoing support for the children and grandchildren Alexis left behind. And in the middle of organizing all of that, in the middle of the worst week of his life, the family had to add one more line to their request. They asked people not to use Alexis's photos or videos without permission. They asked people to report any fake fundraisers trying to profit off her name. Read that twice. A family, still burying their mother, still hadn't finished grieving, and they already had to warn the public about people circling that grief for profit. That single request tells you almost everything you need to know about what tragedy attracts online, and it tells you exactly why the people who did show up for Alexis with something real, the funnel cake factory, the neighbors, the co-workers, mattered as much as they did. So here's where this actually leaves us. A man served time. The state decided he'd served enough. He walked out of Dooley State Prison on May 21st, 2026, and for the next 30 days, existed almost entirely outside the view of the system that had just spent 17 years cycling him through it. No documented mental health follow-up, no account of where he stayed, or how he was doing, or whether anyone noticed something was wrong. Just 30 days of silence, and then a Tuesday morning, a pack of Hamburger Buns, and a total of $1.58. Alexis Hill spent nearly 2 decades showing up to jobs most people never think twice about. She was 3 months from finally joining her sons and grandchildren in Colorado. She spent her last conscious seconds doing something she'd done 1,000 times before, smoothing 2 crumpled bills flat so they'd sit right in the register drawer. Not because of anything she did, not because of anything she said, because a system built to track behavior never once stopped to ask why the behavior kept repeating. And by the time anyone thought to ask, the only question left was who was going to tell her sons. Somewhere in Colorado tonight, 3 sons are living a life their mother helped build and never got to fully share. Somewhere in Columbus, a brother is holding a seat open at the movies that no one else will ever sit in. And somewhere in a state database, a 30-day gap still sits unexplained, waiting, if nothing changes, to open again for somebody else. Keep resting, Alexis.
Lord, we feel like she was taken early, but we know, Lord, that you and only you could see the calamity to come, Lord. So, Lord, she is with you now, Lord. And as her spirit hovers over us, Lord, let us release into the community, Lord, what she has released into us, Lord. Let her love and kindness forever be with us. Let us honor her, Lord. Let her children know, Lord, that her love is always with them. There are no boundaries, Lord. No boundaries with love. And as she is in heaven, Lord, we wrap our arms around her, Lord. Let the community wrap their arms around her children and her loved ones and know, Lord, that it was a life well lived, a life well done. As we say, well done, my servant, well done. Amen. Amen.